Welcome back to part 2 of our Brew With Us project with Thornbridge Brewery. Today we're getting properly stuck in with head brewer Rob Lovett, digging into the nuts and bolts of Jaipore. Grain bill, hop timings, yeast, water, all of it. Grab a pen, homebrewers, you're going to want to take notes.
So we're sat in the tap room, 3 glorious pints of Jaipore. Should we get into the nuts and bolts of the recipe?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Let's get started with the water. My first question about the water profile would be: what are you trying to get to with the water profile? How do you want that sort of displayed in the final product?
I think for me, one of the benefits of Thornbridge is that our water, it's very soft, so it's like a blank slate.
Right.
There's no real agricultural land here in terms of, I mean, there's sheep farming, but there's not lots of fields of barley or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's no leaching into the water, so it's a very natural water source. And you go to different parts of the country, Lincolnshire maybe, or London. You know, the first thing I do when I go and brew in a new area is I take a glass of tap water and I taste it first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's great to have just like really nice tap water that you just love to drink to start with. I'd say that's the first thing that we've got is great, soft, fresh, natural water. But then with the Jaipore, we just want some sulfate and some calcium chloride in there.
What are you doing to the water that's coming into the brewery? Just filtering it for chlorine?
Yeah, it just goes through a straight carbon filter that there's very little chlorine in it anyway. And that's it. And then we add the sulfate and the chloride to the mash, and then we'll add some into the boil as well, into the kettle.
So you've got your lovely, awesome, soft water, and I've got to say I've been drinking pints of it as well in the morning. It's delicious, nice, clean and soft. Let's go into the grist. You've already touched on it when we were in the brewery. Simpson's, low colour, Marisota.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
So that's quite easy to kind of replicate.
Yeah.
I was actually really surprised at the amount of flavour development that you've achieved just using a single malt.
Yeah.
It's quite incredible what you can do.
Yeah, just keep it simple. That's, but some breweries have like 3 different types of crystal and various types of Munich malts, and we tend to keep it simple if we can, so that we're procuring less.
It presents as a beautiful colour, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, lovely colour. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the hops.
Yeah.
So you're doing boil addition.
Uh-huh.
What's going into the kettle?
So we've got the hop nick, which is where I put our whole cone. So a lot of the hops are in there. There's some Whirlpool addition as well, but I'd say the vast majority are in that hop nick. And then we'll calculate the bitterness units because each batch of hops is different.
Yep.
And that will dictate how much CO2 extract we add into the kettle.
Okay, so you're working backwards from what the alphas are on the Whirlpool additions. You're then saying, well, actually, I'm going to extract this much bitterness from those Whirlpool additions, and
from the hop back as well. Yeah, we've got Whirlpool. We've got a different efficiency to the hop back, which obviously, when we first started brewing Jaipore, and you adjust at each brew until you kind of know where you're at, and then it's quite a simple thing just to calculate the amount of.
And that's then what determines
CO2
what the boil
extract.
addition is, the extract,
Yeah.
and there's also a combination of Magnum as well in there.
Well, yeah, we do that because the tins come in 1.2 kilos, and then obviously we don't want to put like a tiny bit of a tin in, so to just trim it, we just trim with Magnum or Hercules or Target.
Yeah, just a clean bitter.
Yeah, clean bitter and hop.
So is that a pellet that you're using?
Pellet, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the Whirlpool. So there's a Whirlpool addition, and I think you said in the brewery there's like 5 minutes or 20, and then 20 minutes rest on top of it.
Yeah.
So you spin the Whirlpool for 5 minutes, turn it off, let it stand for a further 20, and then transfer it from the Whirlpool
into the hop nick. Yeah.
Which has been filled with the leaf hops, which is like an extensive list of leaf hops going in there.
Yeah. All sort of, some could say old school. I mean, it's not that long ago, is it? But pre-Mosaic, pre-Citra, the Centennials, the Chinooks, Cascades, and Simcoe. I think there's some Tarnum in there as well.
Now, our terms are quite an interesting one. That's one we've struggled to get hold of as a home brewer.
Yeah.
Because, it's used up, it's a small amount of it available, and it's used up by a couple of big breweries, and one being yourselves.
I think it's historical, it's always been there, and I'm loath to take it out. I don't want to change the recipe, even though I've been in charge of it, for the majority of its Jaipore's life since 2010.
Yeah.
Then, born in 2005. But I think you could probably, because it's like one of the weaker of the hops in terms of aroma profile.
What do you switch it out for? Something like Cascade, if we
Yeah,
can't get it?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But I wouldn't put anything, those new American hops in it. They just stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, yeah. Spoil the balance of the beer as well.
Yeah, I mean, you do taste these beers that people have had around for years, and suddenly they've decided to put Mosaic or Citra in. I just think it's bonkers. It's just not the same beer anymore.
Yeah.
So the beer passes through the hop nick, and it's getting all that leaf hop.
Yeah.
Then goes to tank.
Yeah.
Dry hop and tank or not?
It's got a small amount of dry hop in the tank, but not very much at all, really.
And then yeast strain. There's different versions of Jaipur.
Yeah.
Cask and keg, can, bottle. And you touched on it earlier that you're using a Yorkshire strain for.
Yes, we've got a Yorkshire strain that we've got in the East Bank, and then we've got the WLP001, which is the Chico strain.
Depending on its serving method.
Cask or bottle, yeah.
So your Yorkshire strain, can you just explain some of the things it delivers, what we should be looking for if we're trying to find a yeast that matches that?
Yeah, I suppose that West Yorkshire strain that White Labs do, I think it is. That kind of strain, yeah. I mean, all the cask beer strains really came probably from one source originally.
Yeah.
So, like St Austell's, Timothy Taylor's, I wouldn't say Fuller's, that's somewhat different. When I taste cask beers out and about, the ones that are just made from like a generic dried strain taste very different to ones that use a wet, traditional cask ale strain.
I quite liked your description of it, where you said it gives a third dimension.
Yeah, it's a three-dimensional beer.
Nice way to explain it.
Yeah, if you tried them side by side, one with our Yorkshire strain, one with our Cal Ale in cask, it would be a very different beer, in my opinion. It's got that quite sulphury note to it, yeastiness. Yeah. It's hard to describe, really.
Yeah, it is hard to describe, but I know exactly what you mean from having drunk all different formats of it myself.
Yeah.
It's just so delicious. Keeps wanting to go back for more.
I just like the way that it's such a well-rounded beer. There's nothing sort of shouting at you in any single direction.
Yeah.
The balance of it's really good and just makes you want to just smash more of it.
Yeah. Sure.
I mean, you can understand why this has been around for 20 years now.
Yeah.
And why it's celebrated.
So let's take a bit of a look at the fermentation. What temperature is it entering the tank at?
16.
16.
And free rice 22.
Okay, and over what sort of period of time?
About 5 days to be the primary fermentation, yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll chill to 12, and it'll sit there for a week before we crash to 1.5.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after that process, then there's a difference as well, because you do a different process for cask than you do for all the other packaging methods.
Yeah. So the cask beer is just straight fermented, and then that goes into the cask, just rough like that with all the finings.
Yeah.
And the primings as it's racked.
But for other packaging methods, you're going
that's
through.
Where we do the week. Yeah, we do that week at 12.
Yeah.
And then we go down to minus 1.5 before we then try and get it. We obviously want it quite bright for.
And that's when you use the centrifuge.
Yeah.
Typical conditioning time?
Well, about a week condition for a week.
So in the cask or condition for a week?
A week, yeah. That's the aim, yeah. A week in cask, yeah.
And the bottles and the cans also go for a conditioning time?
Well, you get the 12 degrees conditioning, and then you get the cold conditioning as well, where we're trying to get it bright.
Yeah.
So that's why it's 3 weeks in total, really, for that product.
So there's a lot of things to think about in this recipe.
Yeah.
Actually, this is really good. So let's move on to, we're going to homebrew this.
Yeah.
In fact, Martin's already had a go.
Uh-huh.
Which was actually really interesting.
It was, and I kind of taste. Yeah, I packaged it up like the day before we came because I wanted it to kind of be as close to like fresh as possible. But actually, a lot of things I've learned today explain why it doesn't taste like what I'm drinking now.
Yeah. It's quite funny how you can look at a brew sheet and you think, I can. That's how I brew it. But actually, until you come and we've met you and your team here and they've given us certain bits of information on the way through, that's what's really handy about it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, the processes in the equipment, and just seeing like a name of a hop on there, I've made assumptions, but it's totally off from what you've done. So I'm really looking forward to getting back and having a go at this again with some different methods that we've picked up along the way from other breweries as well.
Yeah, definitely. And what's really important, so the Whirlpool edition is actually done really hot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that wasn't done on...
No, I didn't maintain the temperature for the whole of the Hopnik edition, which I think is really key to make sure that we get that bitterness from those hops that have been the wort's going through.
Yeah.
So if you've got any particular hints and tips about Jaipur in general, but you could also have some tips for homebrewing in general.
I guess cleanliness is obviously a big one, but I suppose most homebrewers are worth the salt, know that. Keep the oxygen out. Definitely bottle condition. Is that a given now for homebrewers? Do they always bottle condition?
No, not always. I mean, you can package from keg into bottle, so a lot of people are doing that. I think kind of the interesting one that you kind of talked about when we were in the brew house was like the importance of the leaf hops to you.
Yeah, I think leaf hops are really integral to Jaipur and all our beers, really, yeah.
And the quality of the ingredients that you kind of choosing and selecting.
Yeah, obviously quality of ingredients, like, so if you're selecting hops, make sure that they're from a reputable supplier and packed well, you know, low oxygen environment, that they don't look brown. And then I'd definitely go with the wet, with the wet yeast.
Yeah, that's the other interesting thing I picked up in this conversation here is like, you know, I used to be very much an advocate for using liquid yeast, but I've kind of, there's such a wide variety of dry yeast now. I've kind of switched back the other way, but to achieve what we're getting here, the fact that you're advocating, now you've got to focus on liquid yeast for this to get the true taste, and it's going to definitely adjust my brewing.
If you want a Yorkshire strain, that's not available in a dry product. So if we want to replicate this as best we possibly can, 037 it is.
Yeah, and I suppose also controlling fermentation temperature. I mean, I think the homebrewers do, because it's such a small volume, they always used to use heaters, didn't they? But you don't want it to go the other way, like too warm.
Yeah. I find it interesting that you say about bottle conditioning, because you're not the first brewer to actually look at bottle conditioning, because it
gives something totally different, another edge to that product.
Yeah.
And then probably you wouldn't let the beer sit on the yeast for too long. You know, you want to get it away from, primary fermentation. You want it sitting around on yeast for a long time, so you don't get autolysis or anything like that. Yeah, and there's one other thing that I think is really important for homebrewers, is to make sure that their water's, best before they start even playing around with salts. Like I say, that you don't want that chlorine in there. You just want, really good, fresh, wholesome water. So I'd probably look at some sort of filtration unit. I don't know if that's available to homebrewers, RO, or you could even buy water from Tesco. I don't know, but I wouldn't just rely on what the, whatever your water supply, what's coming out your tap. Particularly if you live in an area where, the water quality is notoriously not very good.
At the very least, take the chlorine out of that water.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's going to be cheaper than having to move here. That's the other option, really, is to come and enjoy the water you've got here in Bakewell. I can't thank you enough for the hospitality you guys have given us. Given us this sheet, you've given us the tour around, and learned so much, and I've got so much buzzing around in my head that I want to go back and try. It's just been so great here. The pizzas, which you guys are making with your own beer, that's given me other stuff to think about, because I'm a little bit obsessed with making pizza as well. So thank you so much for your time and all the hospitality.
No, you're more than welcome. And pizza's a big passion of mine. I had quite a lot to do with when we were implementing the pizzas.
Oh, you should definitely be proud of those. They are next level.
Yeah, great.
We're going to head back and crack on trying to perfect this beer.
Yeah.
When we've brewed a batch, that we're happy with.
Yeah.
We're going to get some up to you, see what you.
Why not? I look forward to it. Yeah.
In part 2, we sat down over a pint of Jaipur in the Thornbridge taproom to uncover the full recipe, straight from the source. From hops to yeast to water and of course malt. We now know exactly what makes this legendary IPA tick. But before we head back to Malt Miller HQ to brew our own versions, we've got one more stop to make. In part 3, we're going deeper into brewing history, taking a look at something truly special. Burton Union said that Thornbridge saved. It's a rare piece of British brewing heritage, and Ben, Thornbridge's technical brewer, is giving us the full lowdown on how it works and why it matters. And if that wasn't enough, we're also dropping in on a Thornbridge fan who's built their own small-scale Burton Union system at home. Yes, really. It's tradition, innovation, and a whole lot of passion. All setting the stage for the final part of our journey, where we'll finally fire up the kettles and brew Jaipur ourselves.